What is going on? It's Alex coming back at you with another video, and today, because you guys kept asking, we're going to be breaking down every single UDFA signing for every single team. If you are new, feel free to like, comment, subscribe. You guys know how to use YouTube. We're going to be getting right into 2025 draft content. In fact, there's already 2025 NFL mock draft up, and there's another one coming today because I did one with Broshmo, so I wanted to be able to get that out for you guys so you guys get to be able to have some good content. Let's get right into this, though. It is going to be a little bit of a ride together, so let's get right into it. Starting out with the Arizona Cardinals, signed Colorado wide receiver Xavier Weaver. Big fan of that. We're going to be going over the ones that I think are impactful. If we go over literally every player, we all know that a lot of these guys are not going to be on our team, but the ones who will make an impact will definitely highlight. Xavier Weaver is actually a really solid receiver. If you think about it, he's going up against high-end defensive backs every single day there at Colorado. He's going up against primetime coach DBs. This is a dude who easily can make the practice squad. He actually was pretty damn solid as well. North Carolina's D-tackle Myles Murphy was not too shabby either. That whole entire UNC front was surprisingly pretty damn solid in terms of their pass rush ability. Myles Murphy was not immune to that. He did a very good job. So, defensive interior, certainly a position you guys need to be working on, and at least you're making some moves towards it. Now, I think you should have probably addressed it earlier, but Myles Murphy, far from a bad attempt to at least continue to fortify the position. But I'm not really going to talk too much about long snapper. You guys know, special teams are not my thing. Falcons go Isaiah Wooden from Southern Utah. Gonna be honest, not the biggest guy in Isaiah Wooden. Didn't really surprise me at all. But I'm glad that you guys are bringing in a couple wide receivers. I love Rutgers players, so I'm always willing to give them a shot. Good to see Jaquay Jackson being brought onto the squad. Again, I don't really see many of these guys, if any of them, except for Ryan Sanborn having a chance of being able to make the 53 for the Falcons. Good to invest in some FCS talent there, the offensive tackle position, Ryan Cole. I never really thought that it was that big of, I never thought of him as an NFL prospect, though. For the Ravens, you can start out with Bo Braid. Look at those two Maryland guys, Bullock and Braid. I love the fact that they're bringing in homegrown talent, so to speak. Bo Braid was getting some round 4 love there for a hot minute, so it's worth testing out to see how he works. I wasn't really a big fan of him. I had him actually as a 7th round grade, though, so good value, absolutely. Alabama's backup center, Darian Dalcourt. I know he's the backup because one of my old friends actually dated the current center, Seth McLaughlin, or I think that's his name. Something like that. But so, interesting to bring in a backup center, but Alabama trains up their dudes very, very well. And this team definitely should be taking swings at that position. I was actually a pretty big fan of Emory Jones. I thought he'd do a better job at Cincinnati, but this is a great swing by the Ravens to try to get a backup, if not practice squad quarterback that fits their system really well. He has good movement skills. He just needed to be a little bit more consistent, and then just wasn't consistent enough, unfortunately. Other notable names, Tavian Robinson from Kentucky is not too shabby at all. I don't really know if he's going to be my favorite wide receiver to stick to your roster because Dayton Wade is a yak, and he's not a yak machine. He's a contested catch machine. You guys have probably already seen all the TikToks and Twitter hype that he's gotten already. So definitely somebody to keep your eye out on. Separation, not really his thing, but sometimes like a perfect placed ball can be unguardable with the right receiver who has great contested catch ability and good ball tracking. Definitely somebody who has the best chance out of the ones listed here to make the roster, but I don't really see too many other ones so far that are blowing my socks off. It's good to bring in some extra talent, like Joe Evans, backup tight end there for Iowa. It's good to take shots on the helmet scouting, so to speak. Oregon Edge, John McCartan. I didn't really find any of these guys to be noteworthy, but the ones I listed before certainly are ones that I would be looking forward to seeing. The Bills bring in Frank Gore Jr. It's a big surprise to me that the Niners did not go after Brendan Rice and Frank Gore Jr. I'm a sucker for storylines, so that kind of was a little bit of a kick in the balls for me. But Frank Gore Jr. actually was one of my top 15 running backs coming into the year. He's had some fantastic performances. I think he had over 200 yards in his bowl game in 2022. So he certainly has put up the statistics before. It just has not been overly consistent in terms of showing NFL talent. It's worth it for the Bills to take a shot on him here. Big fan of that. Xavier Johnson Jr. I mean, when you're in a Ohio State receiving core that essentially has like 5 first-round picks, it is difficult to get yourself in the spotlight. So I didn't get to see enough of him for me to be over the moon about it. But, if I'm going to be taking a swing on a receiver randomly popping off and never really showing it in college, it's going to be one of those teams that had an extremely stacked receiver room and didn't let guys truly show all their talent. So Utah guard Keaton Bills, actually, I thought he was going to get drafted. I thought he was going to be around a 7th round pick. I'm not too against the Utah offensive linemen because they teach those guys to be feisty. And to be honest, I do feel like when I watch the Utah, I was about to say Jazz, you gotta be kidding me, the Utes, their offensive line blocks with a ferocity that, if I had a gut feeling as to what it emulates, it is the Buffalo Bills mentality. So I do like that a lot. Shout out to San Diego State punter Jack Browning. I love the fact when teams bring on these special teams players at this spot rather than like the 4th round. It, to me, makes a little bit more sense because the value that you're getting, unless they are really that special of a punter, is extremely more in favor of doing it now than doing it during the draft. Carolina Panthers, Jake Plummer. He's the guy who's now being blasted across the internet as, I think, who is that safety or that defensive back? I'm tripping, but there was an interception that he threw that people are just like cherry picking and using it to highlight some other players. But Jack Plummer's not a bad quarterback. I wouldn't be the biggest, supporter of that being someone who could make the 53. But I actually really like quite a few of these players who are now listed on this for the Panthers for UDFA. Holy Cross receiver Jalen Coker. He didn't test out the best in terms of his straight speed, but he was explosive as all get out. He, I think, had over a 40-inch vertical. And he's actually a really talented player. Just doesn't get very good separation consistently. But at UDFA, there were a lot of receivers who were significantly worse who were taken during the draft. This is actually a big win in my book for the Panthers. Another player I actually really loved and talked about it with Devin Jackson, who works with the Philadelphia Inquirer. It's Monmouth's running back, Jaden Sheridan. This is a guy who I wanted for the Steelers. Pretty much a no-name guy, but very high missed tackle force ratio. And someone who's just been extremely consistent there and extremely under the radar. I could easily see him actually making the 53, at the very minimum, the practice squad. Then you got Andrew Rame, or Rom. I've never been the best with pronunciation until, I'm good at, initial pronunciation, but, when there's names like that I have no idea, let's not use my word as pretty much the law, the letter of the law around here. But Andrew, center out of Oklahoma, he was my number 32 interior offensive line, if my memory serves me correctly. He's a really solid center. He's a good backup. I thought he was going to be he was a guaranteed backup for me, obviously, but he was far from a bum. I didn't really have any UDFAs, so I am a fan of being able to bring him on in this equation. You guys pretty much you didn't address center early enough, so at least you're taking a shot on it here. I actually think it could end up working out relatively in your favor if you do so. Then we have Arizona's edge, Taylor Upshaw. Upshaw was one of the guys who actually put Tali Fuaga in a little bit of hurt. That was the first game where Tali Fuaga, the first round pick, by the way, ended up letting up a noticeable amount of pressures. So Taylor Upshaw is a little bit older. I think he's 25, but pretty sure he was he at Last Chance U? He came from JUCO, but he's a fantastic edge rusher for the value. Genuinely one of the guys, again, I thought was going to be taken in the 7th for a team that's hey, he ended up actually doing a really good job versus a first-round offensive tackle. So keep that in mind. Willie Drew, Virginia State's corner, actually got quite a bit of love in the draft process. I wasn't over the moon about him, but at UDFA, I sure as hell am. He was just getting some round 4, round 5 hype. So you guys got yourselves a good steal there. I mean, the Panthers are doing a good job in terms of bringing on all these dudes, because not only are you bringing on quantity, you're bringing on a lot of quality, including Damani Richardson, who was going to be a round 4 guy for me starting out the year. He's a good enforcer, relatively high IQ, just maybe not, he doesn't have all the bells and whistles you're looking for. And of course, you got Missouri's kicker Harrison Mevis, who kicked that like 62-yarder for the win for him. He has a cannon of a leg. It's certainly worth testing out. The Bears then brought on Western Kentucky's Austin Reed. He actually had some good rapport there with Caleb Williams at the combine. So I love seeing some instant rapport there. Keith Randolph, that was someone who I actually had probably around like a 5th round grade on. That was really good value for the Bears. He's a backup D tackle to, well, he's technically not a backup. He was still starting, but he essentially was second in line there to Jerzon Newton. And it's very hard to not be second in line to one of the best defensive interior talents in the draft. But, still a very good spot for that. You got some guys like British Columbia's tackle, Theo Benedict. Apparently, these guys from the international program don't even cost a roster spot because it's just part of that program. So I'm a big fan of that idea. Apparently they got the clone of Keith Randolph. I did not know they had 2 of them. But regardless, I'm a big fan of the idea of giving guys a chance and not punishing NFL teams for giving dudes who show a lot of athletic potential and just have never had the coaching and opportunity to do something awesome. James Madison's interior defensive line. Jamry Chroma. I'm a big fan of James Madison's players in general as UDFAs. They were a fantastic team, and usually shows that there is at least some form of NFL talent on the team. Whether they're starters or not, that's the real question, and I think that we can kind of lean towards the no on that. Bengals then go Maima and Young Maeda. That guy was an absolute beast. He just tested out awfully. I think it was like 4.9 40 at linebacker. That wouldn't be good at anything but like a D tackle or an offensive lineman. But he actually is a pretty high floor linebacker that just doesn't have the athleticism to really make it work. We'll see if it ends up really getting in the way because the talent, he's a consistent starter for him, and I'm a big fan of his actual game. It's just athleticism-wise, not too great. Aaron Casey, actually. Big fan of Aaron Casey. He has just been a consistent linebacker for them as well. Look at that, dude. Another Mena and Young Maeda. They got multiple of them. The clones are coming out in full force today. But, regardless, Aaron Casey was a solid linebacker. It looks like they're just trying to get some good depth there, which I fully respect. Other players of note, Lane Robinson. I'm a big fan of Tulane's defensive program. Louisville's offensive line program as well. Does that mean these guys are going to be anything? No, but at least you're going to schools that give you the best opportunity for really good practice squad guys. And then Austin McNamara, got to meet him there at Mobile, and big fan of him as a person, and then obviously as a talent. He's a pretty damn good punter as well. The Browns then brought on Javion Cohen. That's an absolute steal in my book. He was, I think, my number 29 interior offensive lineman. So, big fan there. Former Bama guard. He has a very high floor. Then we have Wyoming tight end, Trayton Welch. He's a solid tight end, man. I don't know if he's going to be on an NFL team, but not a bad player at all. Then you have North Dakota State's interior offensive lineman / tackle, Jalen Sundle. He was interior offensive lineman 30. So you got my 29 and 30 right here. Lorenzo Thompson, we'll talk about him in a second, but Jalen Sundle is a very fun player to watch. He ended up taking center reps at the Shrine Bowl, and he's someone who has a lot of energy. I personally liked him more than Mason McCormick, but not by much. Lorenzo Thompson, though, this guy has great footwork, a little undersized. I think he was sub 300, but this guy has some really talented footwork. I saw some videos pop out on him during the year. So, the Browns are doing a good job sniping some good O-line talent there. Not really much that I can comment on besides that. The Dallas Cowboys and get Brevin Spann-Ford. Talk about a fall off. For me, I saw him in 2022 as a really solid route runner with some issues with his hands. I didn't really love the blocking for him, but this year I just saw a massive decrease in his overall efficiency and performance, including an increase in drops. So I just really wasn't a big fan of his game, but in UDFA, it's worth trying to see if maybe you can even convert him to a wide receiver, a big receiver. We'll see if that ends up working out for him, but it was a big letdown for me. I really wanted more from him personally. Besides that, for the Cowboys, I don't really see anything that really knocks my socks off. Backup Illinois D tackles, cool. It's not someone he actually didn't really get very many starting reps. So, Texas A&M corners, at this point, the good ones are leaving. Texas A&M not staying. But, yeah, I'm not really a huge fan of the haul for the Cowboys. Like, Brevin Spann-Ford's worth taking the swing on, though. Denver Broncos. So they get Blake Watson. Didn't get a combine invite. He's been getting a lot of love because, I mean, damn, look at this. They get multiple Blake Watsons too. CBS. But I mean, I'd rather have CBS have too many guys than not enough. So at the same time, as much as I'm crapping on them, it's still it's better to have more than less, right? But Blake Watson's a really good contact balance vision back, one cut type of guy. Did not get a combine invite though, but he's been getting a lot of love because of that. Then we got Omar Brown. Nebraska's safety core is not bad at all. I'm a big fan of their program. They're going to do a very good job this year. Lincoln Victor out of Washington State. This dude's a baller. This dude's a straight baller. Washington State has quite a few really talented wide receivers, but Lincoln Victor is very underrated. I kind of forgot that he was coming out. Great steal by the Broncos right there. Good job for them. They love their Utah players, so it is what it is. Frank Crump tested out phenomenally at the combine. That's actually a really good offensive lineman to take under your wing, practice squad him up. Shout out SMU. Did not really see anything from Jordan Miller when I was here because I'm an SMU alum, but love to see the respect for my alma mater. So any other corners or players that I'm really excited about for this team? Not really, but hey, you got yourselves some good ones. Absolutely. Good job, Denver. I thought you guys did a phenomenal job this draft cycle. Then we got the Detroit Lions, starting with Isaac Ukwu. Not a bad edge rusher. Not a bad edge rusher at all. I don't think he ever makes a team, but he certainly is someone who will probably float around on practice squads. Isaiah Williams, he had a 200-yard game this year. He was, in my opinion, much better than Casey Washington, who was drafted in the 6th round to the Falcons. So good job sniping him there. He's just a little smaller and ran like in the 4.6s, which is not great at all. Steele Chambers, one of the most badass names, but he's just a little bit lighter for a linebacker. He'll need some time to develop, but he's also on the field not a bad player at all. Other players of note, you got Isaac Rex from BYU. Back in his true freshman year, people thought he could end up being a first-round pick. Just ended up falling off after that, and he's going to be a little bit on the older side. Besides that, I'm not really seeing any names that really, again, get me super excited. I love taking shots on Florida or Fresno State players. I just think they have a great program there, and they have dudes who genuinely want to be their best. So I love that. And then Wake Forest, I just love Wake Forest. So again, scouting the helmet, so to speak here, but Kalen Garnes, he's not bad at all. Again, you got yourself some pretty good players out of this group here. Pretty happy about that. Again, you guys know how much I love Louisville offensive linemen. Then we got the Green Bay Packers. Trent Jones was my number 25 or 24 interior offensive lineman. Might have been 23. Hell, it might have been even 20. I think it was 20 in retrospect. So my number 20 interior offensive lineman has right tackle versatility. I thought the Packers should have gotten him earlier in the draft, but great snipe right there, per usual. Ridiculous. Packers do it again. You got to do it. They do it every time. South Florida. I love South Florida. For some reason, when I had NCAA, I think it was like 06. It might have been like NCAA 09 or something like that. But South Florida was like my favorite team. I don't know why, but it was. So I always just get a little heartwarmed whenever I see that. Arizona State's backup tight end, Messiah Swanson. Not a bad option because, their starting tight end, I'm forgetting his name, but Jalen Connors. He's a pretty talented tight end, so it's going to be very tough to get starting reps there. So you still might get yourself some good talent there. Besides that, I'm not seeing anything that really blows my socks off. Raylan Goforth, I never saw at Washington or never popped out to me, but it's at least good to test out some of these corners here. Like Don Callis. I'm a fan of at least trying to get something in the boundary. So I kind of wish they did a little bit more in terms of the DB room. For the Texans, looking at your guys' free agency or UDFA class, Janky's fun. He has a twin brother. It's Jackson. I'm forgetting the other guy's name, but it's another Janky brother. He's a solid receiver, man. But besides that, I'm not a fan of your UDFA class. I wish I were, but the Texans, it really was a roller coaster. It's very hot and cold, I think, in terms of what your acquisitions are this offseason. Then we got the Colts. Keaton Slovis was one of the guys. I said it was that and Devin Leary that were the quarterbacks that I was thinking that could actually be a really solid backup in the NFL and potentially even get some starting reps. Like Keaton Slovis could be that Brock Purdy, so to speak. He has that high-level play. He was an awesome player at USC and just ended up slipping a little bit. Jason Bean's a baller. I love him. He's just not like the best quarterback on planet Earth, obviously. But looking at other players that I like, Malcolm Epps is not bad. Pittsburgh tight end. He was behind Bartholomew, who's a really good one. So again, like at least worth taking the shot on. Marshall, I love all their players. Dalton Tucker, I'd be giving him a shot. Oklahoma's interior defensive lineman Isaiah Coe, I thought was better than the one that the Colts brought on at their 7th round pick. So at least you get some cool synergy right there. So continuing on, the Jaguars, who did they get that's notable? Josh Cephas, he's a really solid tight end, really solid wide receiver. I love UTSA players as well. Usually they go off, transfer somewhere else, and do pretty damn well. And he'd never really got that shot. So, definitely worth bringing on. I did think that, you did a good job addressing that wide receiver 1 position with Brian Thomas, but you definitely need to get some extra competition in there. Anybody else of note? Andre Carter from Indiana actually graded out relatively well for me. He graded out as like a 6th or 5th round player, and he's like 270, so certainly worth testing him out. Same thing with Josh Proctor. I mean, you got yourself some pretty big names here, and I like that quite a bit. So good job by the Jaguars. The Chiefs, Carson Steele. He's a solid, very underrated running back. Curtis Jacobs was a top 64 player for me for a while. The more I watched him this year, the less I liked him, though. He ended up being a 5th round quality player for me. That's an absolute steal. Spencer Sanders, fantastic upside with him. Great mobility. That's exactly the quarterback that you want as your backup, in my opinion. So far doing a really good job. Besides that, Ethan Driscoll, solid tackle from Marshall. Pretty sure he was at the Senior Bowl. So you're getting yourself someone who's looked at very positively by the draft community. Didn't really see too much of the majority of these other guys so far. Fabian Lovett's a good interior defensive lineman to bring on. He was listed about a 7th round pick for me, so that's good value, absolutely. Besides that, let's see. Anybody else? Christian Roland Wallace has had some fantastic games there. Cornerback out of USC. Big fan of that one. That's a good pick. He actually might make the 53 in my opinion. Vegas Raiders, what did y'all bring into the equation? Tulu Griffin, that's a good one. He's a solid wide receiver. Andrew Coker, not a bad offensive lineman. Totally worth taking a shot on him as well. Will Putnam, I thought he was going to be drafted, so good job on y'all for being able to snipe that. Ron Stone, I loved him paired up with my boy Brennan Jackson. I thought they were pretty equally talented. I thought it was kind of a steal that Ron Stone ended up slipping out of the draft. Just a little bit, I think, undersized, but still a very talented player. Jaquan Shepard out of Maryland, I thought was better than some of the Maryland DBs that might have went. So good job by y'all. Good job by y'all. Overall, pretty damn good UDFA class. Chargers, looking at, you got Carson Barnhart, which I think Marcus, that franchise guy, loves him a lot. I didn't really ever see him pop off to me, but I'm very excited to be proven wrong about that again. Good football is better than being right about a player you do not like. Another Carson Barnhart. I love whenever we get to see that. Savion Jackson out of NC State. Not a bad edge rusher. Not a bad edge rusher at all. Worth taking the swing on him. And then I love Florida State DBs. Same thing with Notre Dame. So full support of being able to snag those guys. And then Jalen Phillips is not a bad safety or defensive back for Clemson. For the Rams, Omar Spates, he was somebody who was going to be like a 6th round player for me and then ended up slipping a little bit more. This is proper range for him. It's worth taking the swing on him. Justin Dedich, that whole entire offensive line for USC was kind of buns except for that right tackle that I think it's Jarrett Kingston, who went to the Niners, who I think I might have had a 4th round grade on, if we're going to be brutally honest. Drake Stoops is an absolute beast. Like, I don't know why, but he's going to work out for the Rams. I just have that gut feeling. He just is. Shout out SMU, Charles Woods. But, I didn't really see too much from Charles. Kenny Logan is a solid steal for that Kansas safety right there. Josh Wallace, forgot to even see this dude right here. Josh Wallace was a pretty damn solid corner for Washington, dumbass, for Michigan. So big fan of that. Good job by the Rams. They got some guys who can actually stick to a 53, and that's pretty hard. So, okay, apparently they actually list them as international player pathway rather than like places like British Columbia. Anywho, UTEP's quarterback, I never really saw much with him. Storm Duck, gas. Love that. Same thing with Grayson Murphy. These guys, Louisville, Storm Duck was supposed to go to Penn State, and I thought that he probably would have been drafted if he were. Louisville, still a good spot to go, but I just didn't see him really excel there. He went there, I think, for family. Grayson Murphy, though, talented player. I thought he was easily going to be drafted. Then we got Matt Jones. He's a underwhelming, but especially for UDFA, really solid offensive guard. He was their starting right guard this year. So at least they're doing something to address that in the for UDFA class. And I love the fact they brought on great. Oh, I thought it was Grayson and Gabriel. Man, CBS strikes again. Mac Perry is a pretty good veteran safety there. Same thing with Isaiah Johnson. So the Dolphins got themselves some dudes again that can stick to a 53. I feel like it's a good class. For the Vikings, Trey Knox was one of my best available when the draft ended. So happy to see that. He's a good route runner, former wide receiver. Gabriel Murphy's a good edge rusher as well. He gets some top marks from me. Then we got, let's see, Dallas Gant from Toledo. He's a very underrated linebacker. I don't think that he should have been drafted, but somebody who didn't get enough love. Jeremy Flax is a solid right tackle from Kentucky. I thought that he should have been drafted as well. So you got yourselves a good one there. Anything else of note? Let's see. Not seeing it so far. Oh, you got Dwight McGlothern. So Dwight was in my top 100. So yeah, pretty obviously. He's my number one player left available. Good job for the Vikings, man. Fantastic off-man corner with physical ability. Just had some injury concerns that I think is why he fell. Patriots, Charles Turner, good pickup there. Jontrey Hunter as well. Those are going to be really good depth guys. Don't think they're going to be much more than that, but certainly worth bringing on the squad. Deshaun Fenwick, not a bad running back for Oregon State, but I didn't really see him as someone who I think would make the NFL. Then John Morgan, the more underwhelming of the Arkansas edge rushers, but the Patriots got themselves some good guys in here in Turner as well as Hunter. Then we got these Saints. So far I'm not really seeing anything I love. Dallin Holker though. Dallin Hooker, the brother of Dallin Holker. Dallin Holker, fantastic pickup for the Saints. Obviously he's the dude who caught 2 balls during the gauntlet drill. So, he got some hands in there. And I thought he was probably going to be a 4th round pick. So that's an absolute steal right there. Millard Bradford, not a bad safety either. The Giants, what did y'all get? You got Chris Autman-Bell. This dude was supposed to be the guy after the 2 really high-end receivers out of Minnesota. So Chris Autman-Bell was, see him as a UDFA kind of hurts my soul a little bit. But, it is what it is. You're taking a guy who has a ton of untapped potential. Besides that, not seeing anybody who I necessarily love. For the Jets, Braden McGregor, very nice high floor edge. Definitely thought he was going to be like a 5th round pick. Leonard Taylor, he was my 112th best player on my board overall starting out the draft. So, he was, I think, top 5 easily for me when all was said and done. It apparently is his child because it says the 4th here and not the 3rd. But it's pretty interesting for him not to get drafted and you guys to draft his or bring on his child. So best of luck to you guys in 20 years. But Jarius Monroe was the better of the 2 lane corners, so that's a great steal. Shaheem Battle's a badass name, so I'm going to support that one. Good job overall. I didn't really see too much more than Leonard Taylor and Braden McGregor, but you still brought on some dudes who I thought were draftable. Eagles, Andre Sam, not a bad safety, but the real steal here is Gabe Hall, who I probably was going to say is a fringe day 2 guy. Like, genuinely speaking, one of the best in terms of quick wins that I've seen. So, tip my cap to you guys. Kendall Milton's not a bad running back either. He's not a good running back, but he's not a bad one. Gottlieb Eidze, he was actually an interesting, very high level athlete who tested out well at the combine. So at least you're taking that for Stoutland U. And besides that, Jet Johnson actually is not a bad linebacker. He might have been better than the linebacker that was taken to the Browns in the 6th, Nathaniel Watson. So good for you guys on that. Steelers, John Rice Plumlee, the dude's a baller. Ended up, putting Matt Corral in the backseat for a hot minute there when he was at Ole Miss. But a great athlete, 2-sport athlete with baseball as well as football. So, I actually like him on our team. Beanie Bishop is a really, really solid defensive back. I thought that he was easily going to be drafted. So for us to steal him here feels like an absolute win. Georgia running back and Dejon Edwards. That guy's a beast. He's a physical freak, so I like him quite a bit. Then Jacoby Windman. There was a while there he had his first game back at linebacker from being an edge rusher. His first edge rush game for Michigan State was 4 sacks, by the way. But he actually graded out so well. I think it was versus Wisconsin in 2022. There's a lot of untapped potential with Jacoby Windman. I'm excited for us to see what we can do there. Niners, Tanner Mordecai, former SMU kid. Don't really think very much of him, but Drake Nugent's an absolute steal. I think he was like my number 2 best player available. Then you got Cody Schrader, who I thought was easily going to be drafted. High motor kid. Absolutely fantastic. Evan Anderson as well. Very underrated interior defensive line. So good job by the Niners there. I don't know if Tariq Owens is related to Terrell. I thought that I saw that he was in this draft, but if he is, then that's even more excitement for the Niners. Seahawks, let's see what you got. George Holani, solid back, not as good as Austin Gentry, but still solid. Garrett Greenfield is a very underrated offensive tackle. He was getting overrated for a hot minute because of his testing, but people just didn't show him the love that he deserved compared to Mason McCormick. They're equal in talent, in my opinion. So you get him here. Absolutely phenomenal. Aaron Beasley from Tennessee, underrated linebacker, absolutely. D. Williams isn't bad either. Tennessee had a good defense this year. So you guys got yourself some good pieces of said defense. Nelson Caesar, I never thought would not get drafted. He's a very talented edge rusher. He's very consistent as well. That's an absolute steal. Shout out to my friend DeVere Levelston out of SMU. Glad to see him get brought onto the team. Hopefully he gets to be able to make your practice squad and maybe a little bit more. Sundiata Anderson as well out of Grambling State is a very talented edge rusher. Good group of guys here. Whoever was scouting the edge rush group did a good job there. And then Carlton Johnson out of Fresno State. You guys know what I think about Fresno State DBs. Then we got the Buccaneers. Let's see what you got that I get excited about. So far, nothing. Kalen DeLoche, he's a 210-pound linebacker, but I think as a safety, this guy's a baller. He pops off. He has it factor. That guy could easily make a 53, in my opinion, if he is used correctly. Marcus Banks, I always take shots on Mississippi State defensive backs as well. But besides that, I'm not getting too excited about any of these. But again, you got yourselves 2 really good ones there in Deloche and Banks. Then we got the Titans. What did you guys get? You got Khalid Duke, not a bad edge rusher. Dylan Johnson, he's a nice power back in my opinion. Then you got Keaton Ellis, not a bad player from Penn State, man. I mean, I always take shots on Penn State players personally because I think they have a very good program overall. Youngstown State, Bryce Oliver, he made some flashes in my opinion, but nothing that would get me to bring him on my team. You got Cole Spencer here out of Texas Tech. Tech actually had a pretty good O-line squad this year. Maybe not NFL quality, but for college, not too shabby. Commanders ended up getting Sam Hartman. Just low velocity on the ball, but still a very high level or high floor player. Austin Jones was a talented USC back in a very, very heavy rotation. Marcus Rosemy-Jackson, I never thought wouldn't be drafted. So you guys got yourselves a very talented wide receiver, like wide receiver 5 with upside right there. Michael Wiley, I mean, he was in the shadow of the other Arizona back that's slipping my mind right now. But I think his name's Coleman or something like that. It's very hard to succeed when you have a player who is that damn good. Besides that, Chigozie Anuzium, that's a good DB there from Colorado State. Just like what I talked about earlier. I mean, you're getting trained up by Primetime. This is a good player to bring on. And then Tyler Owens, who's an athletic freak who needs a little bit more seasoning. Overall, really good job by the Commanders. I think your UDFA class is better than your draft class overall in terms of the excitement I have. Obviously, not the actual quality of players. But that's going to be the video. It looks like we are done with this here. So thank you so much for watching. Love y'all. See you on the far side. Peace.